Okay, good morning again. Once again, I'm Mike Warlick. I work for AFCEA International, Vice President for Defense, and we look forward to hosting a session now on NETCOM. And essentially, the title of the day's session is Network Enterprise Technology Command Initiatives. Able to make it this year, had a late-breaking event that she had to, not event, but a requirement that she had to take to go to, so she was unable to make it. At the same time, though, we had this initiative session set up to bring NETCOM more into the fold of TechNet Augusta, and that's what we've done today. So I'll just do a quick introduction, and then the panel will be off and running. So we have Colonel Kevin Litwilder, who's the Deputy Commanding Officer for Digital Integration. Colonel Jason Hester, who's the G5 for NETCOM. CW5 Tammy Surratt, Chief Warrant Officer, NETCOM. Are you the Senior Chief for NETCOM?
Yes.
Yes. Very good. Thank you. Senior Chief for NETCOM. And Command Sergeant Major Jennifer Taylor, Command Sergeant Major for NETCOM. So we didn't get the boss, but we got the cream of the crop. So with that, we'll get started today and look forward to hearing some of the initiatives that NETCOM's undergoing. Thank you.
At the bottom of the cream, right? The one you throw away. You guys ready? No? Delay? All right. Hey, I'm Colonel Kevin Litwilder, as you heard, the Deputy Commander for Digital Integration. My focus for NETCOM is new technologies and how to integrate new technologies into what we are doing in the operations of the DODIN A, or the Army's portion of the DODIN. Tongue-tied a little bit. So what was under me was the Advanced Capability Engineering Directorate, which looks at new technologies and helps us develop requirements. The Data Science Division, which looks at the data analytics for NETCOM to help us enable our operational fight down at the RCCs, as well as our G3 to work through engineering problems and issues on our networks. And then we have what we stood up last year, the Enterprise Computing Environment Directorate, which focuses on our Army enterprise data centers, our the Data Science Directorate, as well, the Enterprise Computing Environment, which focuses on Army enterprise data centers, application migration, as well as cloud computing, and that's kind of where our focus is. I would like to let you know on behalf of Commanding General of NETCOM, General Maria Barrett, that she is very excited that we were asked to support and provide information on the network initiatives. She does send her regrets that she got sent off to another task this week, but she wanted to know that she would have been more than happy to sit here and have this discussion with you. People are our greatest resource inside NETCOM and to do DODIN operations. Our whole mission in life is to deny adversaries their freedom of maneuver inside a contested environment of cyberspace. We are a critical element of doing that. We are aligned with and support a lot of Army operations and their concepts in working through and providing mission command for our Army mission partners. And we are a global command. We are an enterprise command. When you go and look at our budget, we have about a $1.2 billion budget, 15,000 well-trained personnel that are working to defend and operate our DODIN. Over 21 countries supporting about 800,000 users with 1.2 million endpoints. Our focus, NETCOM's focus is done through what we call 621. The one is the threat. That cyberspace is a contested environment and enable readiness. We must be able to enable the Army in cyberspace while denying our adversaries in the cyber environment. This is done through our DODIN operations as well as our talent management. opportunities, there's two opportunities that are available to us, and that is done through modernization and standardization and sensor strategy. By doing those things, that helps us in our operations and its opportunity. This is through what we call STEM, which is in our intern program, as well as training and operations, training management, to focus on those. And then we have three, our third one is priorities, which is through standardization and also standardization and sensor strategy. That is JRSS and convergence, resource the network, which is focusing on category management, force management, and proper POM maintenance of resources, talent management, focus on the people, and then all things Pacific, Europe, investing in Europe and Pacific at the condition to set the conditions for success. To my right, you can see Colonel Hester, Chief Surratt, and Sergeant Major Taylor. We'll begin small statements.
And I've not been in the seat.
The first one will be Colonel Hester, who's working network modernization and DODIN Operations. The foundation of our mission of NETCOM and why NETCOM exists today and over the last 100 years. His focus will be on alignment mission, a DODIN mission, and the DODIN authorities, as well as our B2C2WG that we're working through right now. Move over to Chief Surratt, which will focus mostly on the efforts that the NETCOM's doing to make our enterprise less complex through standardization, such as domain collapse, some tools, and supporting the Army through standard ASD and category management. We'll move back to Colonel Hester, where we're going to talk where we are in modernization and network services. The network services in modernization includes global enterprise fabric, Army enterprise data centers, joint regional security stack, network modernization, and cloud application migration. Now, I will take over some of that because it falls inside my realm for as the DI, but he'll take most of the workload on those pieces. What we will not cover today, or what we won't answer questions on, is what has come out as enterprise, the Army's work into the Army's version of enterprise IT as a service. And that's because of where we're set right now in the acquisition cycle. We can't talk about what we're looking and what we're doing on ETADS. But if we're going to talk integration of how we expect NETCOM to integrate, that is part of what the pilot is when we go and look across the board is how it integrates with the NEXT, how it integrates with RCCs, and things like that. So that's over the scope of the pilot for NETCOM that we're going to work through. But we can't answer any questions of what are the vendors providing, what is the cost, and things like that, just because of where we're at in the acquisition cycle. And then we'll go into Command Sergeant Major Taylor, who's going to talk the sustaining of the force, and that is more of to meet our what we've been given as authorities for DOD Operations. We're going to work through. We have to work and strive for talent management of our force, both soldiers and civilians. What kind of training we're doing, whether it's through STEM or whether it's through the intern program, or whether it's getting our civilians and soldiers to the newest innovative technologies that are out there, and understanding software-defined networks, understanding 5G, 4G LTE, how does that integrate into the wireless systems, which I will most likely have to answer that because it's part of my DI responsibilities, so I'll be able to answer those questions for you. And then the force management piece, which I can also assist in those questions that you would have for Sergeant Major Taylor. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Colonel Hester, and then we'll just move back and forth as soon as they're done. And then once we're done with that discussion, we'll open up for questions or concerns or challenges that you may have. Colonel Hester.
Good morning. So my name's Jason Hester. I'm the G5 at NETCOM. I've been in this position for about 1 year now. Let me get accustomed to this microphone, see how close I need to get. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking about our first LOE, line of effort, that you see on the slide over on the right. That's conduct DODIN operations, and I think it's the appropriate place to start this conversation about NETCOM's latest initiatives and what we do. Conduct DODIN operations is why we exist, and so it's worth spending a couple minutes talking about what this is and what it means and how that's evolved over to kind of set the foundation against which we apply all our other efforts. So I'll refer you to the mission statement there on the top of the slide in the white. You'll see the phrase leads global operations for the Army's portion of the DODIN, Department of Defense Information Network. As our cyber formations have evolved in recent years, so do our roles and responsibilities as we delineate between different commands. So about 9 months ago, our cyber helped provide a little more specificity about what this means to lead global operations for the Army's portion of DODIN. When General Fogarty issued an order to NETCOM, to Commander NETCOM, all authorities necessary to conduct DODIN operations. So what's DODIN operations? Many of you are familiar with Joint Publication 3-12, and in that publication we find our doctrinal framework for this discussion. That doctrinal framework in JP 312 bins cyberspace activities into 3 different categories. There's offensive cyber operations, defensive cyber operations, and there's DODIN operations. And, of course, within DCO, there's separate bins as well. I know you're all familiar with that. So that order essentially about 9 months ago established NETCOM as the formation within the Army Cyber Forces to conduct DODIN operations. JP 312 uses 6 verbs to describe what DODIN operations are. Those are verbs like secure, configure, operate, maintain, sustain, and extend. I think that's all 6. So that's Joint Doctrine's definition of what DODIN operations are.
And supported it.
Order late October last year, 2018, we kicked off an assessment of NETCOM's alignment against those tasks. But those 6 verbs are really not sufficient to get after all the tasks needed to conduct DODIN operations. So leading up to that designation, NETCOM staff and our cyber staff collaborated quite extensively to define in more granularity what it means to do this DODIN operations thing. And then ended up with a list of, there's over 100 of them, 100 discrete tasks that were included in an annex to that order that defined what it means to do DODIN ops beyond those 6 verbs in the joint pub. So we took those specified tasks from our headquarters and started assessing our capacity to execute those tasks. Now keep in mind, this is to our awareness, this is the first time that our community's really taken a stab at defining DODIN operations beyond those 6 verbs. So of those 120-some specified tasks that we had delegated to us, that does not necessarily imply that anybody was doing some of them before. Our cyber had been doing some. NETCOM was certainly already doing a lot of them. But frankly, there were some that were not addressed anywhere between our formations. So we embarked on a couple-month process of assessing how we're aligned against all those tasks. And we found capability gaps. And so in the ensuing months, we've been putting together plans and developing courses of action to get after some of those capability gaps. In particular, to better synchronize our operational awareness with other elements of the enterprise. JFHQ DODIN, for example, our cyber's ACOIC, and the delineation of responsibilities between us and our cyber given the task for NETCOM to execute DODIN ops. You remember one of the 6 verbs I mentioned was secure. So our cyber does retain the DCO and OCO primary function, And there, when you get into the weeds of what it means to do DODIN Ops secure versus DCO, there is room for debate along the line there. There are some gray areas. So we're still working that out to make sure that we don't step on each other as we do that. This also, along with assessing our own capacity to get after all these tasks that make up DODIN Ops, it also triggered an assessment of the command relationships required for our commander to indeed exercise DODIN operations globally. For example, the order also established TACON command relationship, tactical control, between NETCOM and the regional cyber centers, RCCs. Previously, they are assigned forces to our cyber. Our cyber maintains OPCON, but this order about 9 months ago formally established TACON between NETCOM and the subordinate RCCs to execute DODIN operations and the activities they own within the DODIN operation space. There's still work to do there as we work to define the relationships between subordinate signal brigades and the RCCs with the intent that we power down to the lowest level commanders the ability to really execute DODIN operations. Another piece that's part of this, and I believe Chief Surratt will get into this a little bit, is ORGNet convergence. So some of you are aware that there's enclaves in the Army within the DODIN-A that are not, in fact, under the authority of the NETCOM commander. A couple of examples, Army Corps of Engineers, Army National Guard. So there's ORGNets out there that are going to be collapsed, and I know she'll talk about that. But the reason it's relevant to this discussion is that's part of the intent of the delegation of DODIN operations, is to end up with the end state of NETCOM commander having true authority over the entire DODIN-A, which means an end state with a collapsed AO authority, authorization official authority, at commander NETCOM, with delegation down to the theaters beyond that. So that's just a couple of comments about where we are with DODIN operations. It's been a pretty active last 8 or 9 months upon receipt of that order as we continue to evolve this relationship between NETCOM and our cyber, and how we're working in a coordinated fashion to execute all those tasks, OCO, DCO, and DODIN operations. So I think I'll hand it over to Chief Surratt for the next LOE.
All right, thank you, sir. Good morning. My name is CW5 Tammy Surratt, and I'm the Command Chief Warrant Officer at NETCOM. So to continue the theme of some of the topics we've been discussing, I'm going to hit a couple of our priority items that are included in our NETCOM 621 slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about ORGNet convergence and also touch on the Army Enterprise Service Desk. So as the RCyber operational arm for the Army's portion of the DODIN, these couple initiatives that we have ongoing support both standardization and ultimately support our goal of ensuring a freedom of action in cyberspace while denying the same to our adversaries. So I'm going to go a little bit into ORGNet convergence. So Colonel Hester mentioned it briefly, that we currently have approximately 60 plus ORGNet/enclaves. So what ORGNet convergence is doing is we're taking a look at these enclaves, and we're going after realignment of these Army enterprise and standalone networks to include the IT components and resources that are included with those organizations, and with the end state to create an integrated enterprise network under the RCyber C2 governance model as a single service provider. And additionally, just to drive home the point, as Colonel Hester mentioned, a network where the NETCOM commander has the full authority over the DODIN-A. So where are we going with ORGNet convergence? Right now, it is a 5-phased approach. It is we're going to conduct discovery, assessment, planning, And we're going to then go into the convergence execution, some post-convergence activities, and then at the end we're going to validate all of the convergence activities. So again, why is this important? So independently managing and maintaining these org nets is, one, too expensive, and it negatively affects the Army's ability to modernize, standardize, and to effectively secure the DODIN, which inhibits streamlined mission command and places the burden of cybersecurity on the commanders. We are the provider of that cybersecurity, and this convergence will allow us to fully take on that role. So what is the current effort? So to reduce these cyberspace attack susceptibilities, we must establish a single, secure, standard-based, fully modernized, and singularly managed DODIN. And what this effort starts with is discovery. So right now, as far as the discovery process, or I guess to back up a little bit, what is NETCOM from the headquarters doing? So NETCOM, we are tasked with establishing a governance structure to oversee the OrgNet convergence activities, as well as overseeing the validation of the accuracy and completeness of discovery of data and tracking the dependencies and the risk. So 7th Signal Command is actually executing the discovery process. They have teams that are being compiled to perform technical and administrative discovery activities, and they're actually starting at Fort Gordon. They're going to kick off the discovery process here at Fort Gordon, and also our TSCs and the OCONUS theaters are going to simultaneously start some of this discovery process within their theaters. And we're expecting it will take each major installation approximately a few months to get through the phase 0, which is this discovery, and then phase 1, which is identifying the resources within this process. So where is the Army, where are they going with this? So we are expecting a draft headquarters DA XORD that is currently undergoing staffing and expected to be released probably sometime in the near future. And again, I just want to drive home the fact that the reason the OrgNet convergence exists is to align all these networks under Commander NETCOM. So that is OrgNet convergence. Now I'm going to hit a little bit on the Army Enterprise Service Desk. So as of 1 August, NETCOM, our cyber and NETCOM, assumed the operations of the Army Enterprise Service Help Desk. And again, this was a phased transition, and it's an effort to, again, standardize our processes and align them to our C4IM requirements. So currently it's being worked, some of the details are being fleshed out with the operations at the help desk, but it's going to, again, standardize our service desk support. It's going to improve our continuous service and streamline our IT operations framework. So these are just a couple of the items that are included in NETCOM's priorities that are driving towards developing a single converged network that's going to give us the flexibility and performance that we need as we move into the future. So I'm gonna hand over the microphone now to Command Sergeant Major Taylor, and she is going to speak to some of the talent management efforts of NETCOM and our cyber.
Good afternoon.
Oh, you're good.
I get 2 mics. Taylor, as they've said, NETCOM CSM. All right, as each of my panel members have already emphasized, the NETCOM mission, which is responsible for the Army's portion of the DODIN, ensuring freedom of action in cyberspace while denying the same to our adversaries. We do this because of our people, the varsity communicators within NETCOM. The people are our number one asset within NETCOM. We have over 15,000 people within NETCOM in our footprint of different occupations and MOSs. With our intern program, we have a civilian working group within NETCOM, and we recruit, develop, manage, and retain those personnel. And within that, we're trying to get them to the critical missions within our NETCOM to help retain them within our footprint. Within our footprint, we want to enhance our readiness, and our goal is to identify those civilians for our intern program. So within our intern program, we currently have 101 interns within our STEM program. So that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So our current intern program is a two-year program. So once they graduate that program, successfully complete the intern program, the goal is to place them permanently within NETCOM. So just like the civilian intern program, we have a similar program within our military. We have the military talent management program. Thank you. So we reestablished that in 2018, and the same thing with that. We look for the talent for our critical positions within NETCOM, placing them. We work with HRC, our G1, our theater, brigade, CSMs, and we place them within our NETCOM footprint as well. Right now, we have about a 50 to 60% placement rate, keeping our qualified soldiers within NETCOM as well. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is ensure that we're keeping signal soldiers and civilians within NETCOM. We've been supporting NETCOM. NETCOM has been supporting the warfighters for 101 years. So what we're trying to do is just keep the talent within NETCOM supporting our warfighters. So for more information, we have our handouts here, and at that time, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
All right, so I'll jump back in to just a couple minutes about the Modernize the Network line of effort up there on the slide. So, wow, this could be a big scope, right? That's what many of us spend most of our days doing in all kind of disciplines within our business, is figuring out how to modernize the network and leverage it to maximum effect. So I'll mention, first of all, enterprise IT as a service. I know Colonel Litweiler mentioned that leading up to it. Obviously, we're constrained to a certain degree about how much details we can get into because of the acquisition process we're in with that. But I'll mention it just I think it's relevant in the context of network modernization, because it is, frankly, an approach that the Army is investigating to manage the modernization of the integrated enterprise network in the out years, right? So the obvious intent, as you've heard our senior leaders describe, probably some of you, is to investigate the feasibility of industry providing the integrated enterprise network services for us, while we focus on our bread and butter, the integrated tactical network. So that's just at a 50,000-foot level what enterprise IT as a service is. It's certainly part of a modernization approach. Another thing I'll mention is if you've been in circles around General Crawford or General Fogarty speak in recent months, you have heard them discuss a revamped approach to modernizing the infrastructure at our installations around the globe. And specifically, I'm referring to, I think there's something like 13 different highlighted areas for modernization. They range from VoIP to ICANN modernization, you name them. There's 13 different one of these, I believe, is the right number. And what we found over years is that we've essentially proven to ourselves that it's pretty tough with fiscal challenges and palming and just programmatic challenges. It's tough to get in installation ever modernized. Of those 13 things, we might be good in a couple of them at a given location, and we're pretty aged in the other 11. So the CIO has led us on a path to attack that in a different way, and that is, frankly, to prioritize the installations around the globe and knock them all out, all 13 initiatives, and really modernize installations before we move on to the next one. Certainly plenty of programmatic and fiscal challenges remain even with that approach, but that's a shift that the Army has made in recent months as we look to modernize installations around the globe that has real impacts on how we execute and distribute this technology. A couple other modernization initiatives I'll mention. One is GEF, Global Enterprise Fabric. Some of you are familiar with that. It's been in the lexicon for a few years now. The original intent was to save money, frankly, and provide a standardized platform, specifically in the context of our provision of enterprise services and sensors throughout the globe. So the hardware providing that infrastructure around the globe is aged, needs replacing. And while we replace that, we're in a more cost-effective way, so standardizing the infrastructure by using regionalized, virtualized platforms that are centrally managed, decentrally executed to provide those services. So this has been something that's been in the works for quite some time, and it's just now starting to get rolled out in the coming months. We'll be hitting our first installations deploying GEF. So that's a pretty major initiative. The last one I think I'll mention is Joint Regional Security Stacks, JRSS. So I know most of you have been in the community for quite a while, and you've been hearing JRSS for quite a while. So believe it or not, it does still qualify as a modernization effort, even though we've been talking about it for a few years. So I'll just give a brief update on where we are with JRSS, and then I think I'll give myself the hook after that. So what is JRSS? First of all, JRSS is a DISA-provided service. It's a security and architectural construct within the DODIN to include the DODIN Army. And we are leveraging that construct to replace our aging top-level architecture, TLA stack architecture that we have at all base post camp stations. Many of those are beyond end of life. But aside from just replacing equipment, we're pulling that TLA paradigm, which exists at each base post camp station, regionalizing that with the regionalized JRSS construct, reducing the attack surface, centralizing security management, providing better visibility on cybercom of that traffic. That's essentially what JRSS is. We are currently, we've migrated 125 out of 284 installations that we've got around the globe, so we've got a ways to go. In the summer of 2018, the Army and DISA jointly decided to execute a tactical pause with our migration activity. Most of you know there's been challenges with JRSS along the way. There's complex, right? So the word I use often is unforgiving. It's an unforgiving technology. There's nothing necessarily inherent about JRSS that breaks things, but it will expose other issues that you have that may not have otherwise been exposed. And frankly, that had happened quite a bit in the first couple of years of migration activity, which is why the pause was instituted in the summer of 2018. We went through a 6 to 8 month kind of deliberately focused effort in collaboration with our partners at DISA to improve performance of the stacks, really study how the Army integrates into JRSS better, developed quite a few subject matter experts about JRSS, and executed some technical fixes and procedural fixes. And in spring of this year, General Crawford, General Fogarty, and Admiral Norton collectively made the decision to restart Army migrations. And so we've been back on that path towards 284 for a couple months now. We've executed 4 more migrations in the meantime. The senior leader's guidance to us was to execute conditions-based migrations, not be a slave to the schedule. And I think we've shown an appetite to stay true to that in recent months. We have delayed a couple migrations we have a better understanding of the criteria that we have to enforce before we start migrations. And we're pretty comfortable that we will continue to that we will see successful migrations going forward. That said, there are still challenges, plenty of challenges as we prepare sites for migrations. As I said, the JRSS will expose misconfigurations you have on the ICANN and what have you. So we think we've got a much better understanding now post-pause of what those kind of considerations are and how to get after it. And we're proceeding down the path. And we have probably a small handful of years left to go before we complete the enterprise. That's NIPR. SIPR is a little bit different architecture for those of you familiar, so the actual mechanics of migration will be different. DISA is in the final stages of standing up their SIPR JRSS architecture. We anticipate that in winter timeframe in the coming months. That the DISA's SIPR architecture will be up and running, and we've got a couple pilot installations identified, and probably around the beginning of the calendar year is when we'll institute our first couple pilots on SIPR JRSS. So I always have to be careful when I start talking JRSS. I could accidentally talk for like a couple hours on JRSS. So I'll cut myself off now and turn it back over to Colonel Litwiler.
Before we turn it over to questions, I just want to reemphasize a couple different things that you heard, the themes across the board. We're not the NETCOM of old where we were a direct reporting unit to CIOG-6. Our whole focus is moved towards operating and defending the DODIN. That is our whole focus. We're no longer working acquisitions like we were doing when we worked for the CIOG-6, and we're no longer doing engineering and architectural work when we're as we were when we were doing part of CIOG-6, a direct reporting unit. We're now, our engineers are focused specifically on becoming the hotshots for our NECs, to be able to engage and do work for the NECs and solve some of the difficult problems that our NECs have in this complex network. They are also, our acquisition people, or the people that were looking at new technologies, acquiring it and getting out there, have now been focused mostly on looking at the technologies that are out there to see if they meet the requirements that we have developed, or if there's a new requirement or a gap that's been identified, developing the requirements to get it over to our cyber and PEOEIS. We're going to let the acquisition professionals do the work instead of us trying to do the work internally in the command. So there's a significant difference on how we do our mission in life, that we're totally focused on operating the DODIN. That should help our mission force, our mission partners and the Army to have an enabled network versus what they're currently going through in the complexity that we have. We're moving towards focusing on data, securing the data, transporting the data, getting accessibility of the data to our mission force. That is what our focus is, instead of focusing completely on transport and focusing on systems. So that's where we're going. That's how we're going to go and transform NETCOM, is to focus on the center of gravity for the Army, and that's the data that we have. So that's where we're going for in that one. And through our standardization efforts, we're moving to make it less complex. Whether it's in the Army Enterprise Service Desk, whether it's in domain consolidation or collapse, or doing other different things in standardizing and making it less complex for the Army, and making it less complex for our NECs, so they can be enabled to be able to make everyone effective. So that's kind of what we're focused on. And again, I would like to pass that we've got this trifold that NETCOM has as part of what we do, our missions, how we're tied to our cyber, and meeting what their objectives are and their priorities, and we're going from there. So please, if you have an opportunity to pick up a trifold, please pick up a trifold, and so you can kind of see what our force is and what we're trying to do. At this point, we're open for questions. We can make it a fireside chat with Litwiler, or you can ask any of these guys a question, and we'll be more than happy to answer.
Hi, Colonel Company. Thank you very much. I'm Sidney Friedberg, evil media guy, reporter from BreakingDefense.com. Wanted to ask, I mean, you've mentioned this, the whole point of enterprise as a service is to get more focus on the tactical network. An enterprise General Yee was just talking about convergence of enterprise and tactical, how that's all one system. The stuff you guys are talking about, NETCOM's new role, how forward towards the tactical edge does that get? We talked a lot about installations here and getting them onto JRSS, but is a FOB, is a forward deployed brigade headquarters, in your jurisdiction? Are you the sheriff there as well, or is that a separate system? And how is that changing?
So it's it depends on which unit you're talking to for NETCOM. We do provide our tactical edge is through the RHN, where we provide the access for the FORSCOM units to be able to communicate into the strategic networks. But we also have, through 2nd Signal Brigade, we have expeditionary NECs, which are provided through tactical forces that go and deploy out to support 2nd Signal Brigade in their mission over in Europe. We also provide the tactical capability through 25th Signal out in the Middle East and what they're doing in Afghanistan and Iraq. So that's kind of where we're tied in on the tactical side, and how we're providing, we're enabling the forces through the tactical. But if you're talking down to what the STBs do, the signal companies that are a part of the East Division or the Corps, we don't provide that capability. That is done through FORSCOM, the requirements for that. If you're talking, like 35th Signal Brigade and 11th Signal Brigade, they are tied in with us. And then we also are tied in with FORSCOM on making sure that we're integrated with their required submissions. I don't know if that answered your question, but I'll look over to Jason and see if, no, we're good. So it's turning into fireside with Litweiler, so we're good. But did I answer your question?
Is there an Indo-PACOM brigade or a single brigade as well that you guys are working through there, or is that theater different?
So we are working with 1st Signal Brigade in their communications. They are also a tactical and strategic brigade that provides communications. And then 311th is in 516th, 311 Theater, and then 516th Signal Brigade also provides tactical to strategic networks, and we provide for that. So if you're talking network support at the true, what we call the true tactical, that is through the FORSCOM units. If you're talking the ones that are providing support for between that connection between the tactical and signal and some tactical missions, like 1st Signal Brigade does have tactical missions, a mission set, they are provided through NETCOM, and it's all integrated, or as integrated as we believe they are.
Great. You mentioned that you don't report to the CIO's office. Could you give us just a quick overview of your command relationships and higher headquarters?
So we have our direct report is through our cyber, as directed in the latest DODIN. And so we are a subordinate organization to our cyber. We do have coordination with CIO G6. So we still have a very close relationship with CIO G6. We're still tied in their policies. We're through the cybersecurity Directorate. They are still providing that support for CIO G6. We're also tied with their cloud management office. We're tied in with their IEN support and the requirement development for the Army Next. And then we're tied in with, we're also tied in very closely with TICM NNS and TICM Cyber. So instead of having direct report up there, now we're just in a coordinating and collaborating effort. But we still have the same close connections. It's just we're not trying to do acquisitions anymore. And then that also standardized the engineering and architectural is when it's done at the CIO G6 policy level versus down at a subordinate organization that works for our cyber.
And when it comes to command relationships, I think it's worth noting that our cyber, General Fogarty, is delegated from U.S. Cyber Command, DACO, Directive Authority for Cyber Operations. So that authority applies to the entire DODIN, even those enclaves that we mentioned are not yet converged. So leveraging that RCyber DACO authority, the RCyber and NETCOM formations do in fact have that degree of authority over the entire DODIN, even those not directly assigned units, if that makes sense.
Good morning, sir, or good afternoon. Sergeant Major Onua, Office Chief of Signal, proponent Sergeant Major. So as you move forward with the implementation of JRSS, do you foresee any major changes needed in the personnel systems to meet the capabilities of that implementation?
I don't know that it's. I wouldn't say that we've identified any personnel gaps that we have. There's been training gaps identified.
Roger, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're absolutely the community in general, to include NETCOM, is moving to meet those training gaps. But I'm not sure if you're asking if we're looking if there's specialty gaps or something along
specialty
those lines.
Training, anything that we at the Office Chief of Signal and the Signal School could be prepared to better assist you with as you move forward, to extend that olive branch to get ahead of those things, sir.
Yeah, so the JRSS operators exist in several places in the formation, and if you're paying attention to things like the DOTIN report about JRSS, it highlighted training deficiencies and that kind of thing. So that's something the community's been taking seriously between us and DISA. We have developed a mobile training capacity with our global management team that we have at NETCOM that is able to travel to locations and provide training. One of the challenges we've had, frankly, is TDY funding for the operators to move locations where training is available for them. So that's one way we've moved to get after that. We just underwent an operational assessment that concluded. JITIC led it. It concluded about 3 weeks ago, I think. And the focus, it was a JRSS operational assessment, and the focus of that assessment was on the training piece. So it'll be interesting to see their findings and how that compares to past reports and assessments and training. We're optimistic that we've improved in that area.
Hey, this is Dustin with SOS International. So quick question. So we talked about you guys are now reporting to RCyber directly. Can you guys talk about and shed some light on some of the communication we have with the interjection of new op centers like the Fusion Center, the GEFs, the GEF, whatever they are, with their own little world as far as reporting to them, how we coordinate through DISA, down through us, down into the ICANNs to the NECs, and all the different communication pieces that we're having challenges with?
So where are you speaking from? From what perspective? So I know maybe how best to answer your question.
I'm the program manager for the RCC CONUS.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Yeah, so this kind of, I don't know if I'll be able to answer your question perfectly. This kind of gets into my discussion about DODIN authorities and delineation of roles and responsibilities, because you're right, we have different enclaves of ops centers now. We've got the NETCOM DODIN Fusion Center, we've got the ACOIC at RCyber, we've got the RCCs. And so along with defining the command relationships between us and the RCCs, the brigades and the RCCs, and what have you, we also have some work to do still to clearly identify the delineation of activity between those ops centers. I don't think anybody would claim that we have that perfectly right now. In fact, when I describe the assessment we've done about our capacity to really get after those 120 or whatever discrete tasks, a lot of the capacity we think we need to build is the current ops sync kind of capability between all those different entities, and make sure we're on the same sheet of music. And again, that it also applies to the reference I made to the delineation between DCO activity and DODIN Ops secure activity, right? So that's a little point of contention about which ops center is managing the show in that regard. So if you're hoping for me to give you the answer up here, I'm afraid I don't have the answer. But that's definitely an issue we're still wrestling with as we evolve our formation here.
My name is Bill Scott. I'm an IT consultant. You mentioned the Data Sciences Directorate, and I know this is an initiative you've been standing up at some satellite locations. I'm wondering if you can tell me or tell us how that stand-up is going at those satellite locations and what some of their near-term priorities and objectives are for that directorate?
So right now we have 2 of them set up, one at Monterey and then one in Phoenix. And they're doing well. They're highly involved in the one in Monterey is closely tied to track out there, and working through initiatives and that they're doing out, the Navy's doing, and what the track is doing in Monterey. We've already have one spinoff, which is tying into a track initiative for network monitoring / analysis of what the network is doing, and providing us a capability to look at what can we fix inside the network, what can we improve. It's kind of a management and analysis tool that is very effective. But that came out of Monterey. We're currently doing a pilot on that through the Advanced Capability Engineering Directorate to get us the findings for it. When I first heard about it, I immediately wanted to do a pilot because it fills a critical gap of analysis. It's not an AI, but it gives us a quicker analysis than what we already have to understand what the network's doing. The one up in Phoenix, led by Jerry Core, is actually been doing some of the hard answers for us that, as we're focused on the near fight inside the Data Center Science Directorate right in NETCOM, they're out there looking at I won't say the far fight, but they're instead of the close fight, they're the near fight. And they're whatever we can't handle inside of the NETCOM team, we push out to them because of where they're tied with ASU. So that's kind of what they're doing for us, and they're able to engage ASU for challenges or systems, and they're also able to influence our intern program because they have a whole bunch of people learning about data science and getting their major in it. So we're able to try to go and pull some of those students into becoming an intern for us to support us. So it's a very effective tool for that. We're looking at trying to stand something up in Maryland at Fort Meade, and then Philadelphia next to the AI task force. So those are the other 2 that we're looking at doing. It's just we have to work through the manning, the force management piece of it, the personnel, and what the positions are. I think the priority would be the AI task force, putting someone out there so we can engage them and learn from them, as well as use them for support on what we're trying to do with the data science side. The other one is, of course, Fort Meade, which is close to Johns Hopkins, to be able to be tied into to that effort as well as what's going on with Johns Hopkins. But those are a little bit further off as we work through the force management and trying to get the right people in the right place, as well as the infrastructure and things like that. The one in Austin, because AFC is kind of standing up their own, we pulled back on the Austin one to see what we're going to be able to get out of through AFC. So if we're not getting as much, then we'll set out a small team just to be able to liaison with AFC and provide them the data support.
Mr. Scott, to add on to what Colonel Lidwaller just stated about our DSD team, our DST team just recently won the Army Flying Hour Challenge that was hosted by the PA&E team. So 2 winners were selected, one for best prediction and one for best visualization. So kind of proof of concept of what our team at the headquarters is doing. So to kind of let you know what our DSD team is doing as well.
Right. Sir, I'm from Booz Allen Hamilton, Mark McComb. I do have a question about the relationship of the GEF requirement and AM4PS. which I didn't hear you mention. Can you talk about the relationship of those two requirements?
The GEF and AMPS.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with. I was just looking at Jason to see if he was familiar with what you said.
AM4PS.
Yeah,
It's Army modeling, managing, monitoring, management.
So, sir, I think the GEF is essentially our fabric. So it's just the fabric that we'll be able to place our enterprise capabilities on. So I think to best answer your question, the GEF will be the hosting platform for any of our current and future enterprise applications. So that would be the relation between the two, sir.
For Chief Surratt, you talked about singly managed DODIN A, and over the course of the last few years, we've seen more and more technologies be pulled up to NETCOM for O&M. So as those technologies are pulled up and you still have other technologies being O&M'd out of the cyber centers and other organizations, and you talked about NETCOM's role changing from being an engineering to being more of a subject matter expertise for troubleshooting. How do you see NETCOM kind of synergizing all those O&M activities into different organizations and directing that from that standpoint?
So I'll take a shot at this, and I may allow Colonel Hester and Colonel Litweiler to also add any additional. But I would say I think a lot of our applications where they're being executed today in the regional cyber centers is going to remain the same. They are part of the R Cyber NETCOM team, so that is part of the centralization of services. So I don't think we're going to see any changes as far as that's concerned, but all of our orgnets will now fall under the purview of that umbrella with the RCC as far as the services being executed. Did you want to add anything, Colonel Litweiler or Colonel Hester?
So it's all part of making it less complex, and then seeing what we can do for the Army. When you go and start bringing things up to NETCOM, whether it's tools, applications, and things like that, if it's all centralized as a enterprise license agreement or something else, there is some benefits to NETCOM. So when people get concerned about what we're doing, we're just trying to figure out what is everything that we have out there. Once we identify it, then we can see, okay, we've got 50 licenses here spread throughout. Why do we have 50 different licenses, all having different mods and all having different requirements? Why not bring it all in together with one standard capability and make sure we understand it? So that's the biggest piece that we have, because what we're doing is we're signing acquisition packages and working through acquisition packages for one, and then the next week we're getting ready to do another, and then we're getting ready to do another, and none of the prices are the same. So there's no standardization in prices, and some of them are real close to being the same product. So that's the biggest thing that we're having. The ability for the engineers, instead of trying to figure out the next architectural, genius plan, the unicorn that's out there to make the networks better, instead of focusing on that and allowing CIO G6 to focus on it, we can now focus on what did we design back in the day, and we've been doing the same thing over and over and over again. Let's relook at what we have, and that's what the engineers are doing now. Let's look at what we have and how can we make it cleaner, better, and work through it. So that's what the engineers are doing. So it's not like we've given it up and we're only focused on being the hot shots. They're also going back through and they're finding challenges that we have. They're being tied in with the capability managers that are inside OED and 3.5. They're tied in with them, and they're finding these problems, and they're actually solving some of the problems for us. We had some problems up at Fort Leavenworth. We had some problems in Fort Polk that we needed some answers on, and it's not anyone else doing it. It's those engineers going out there and solving the problem for us. Instead of going out and trying to figure out who can do it for us, they're doing it. They're employing sensors for us now. They're doing all these different things that we didn't have them do before because they were so busy trying to figure out what the next big thing that they needed to solve. So it's actually been a benefit for us. I would say maybe they wouldn't because it's not as fun doing the real hard work, which is the current operations, instead of looking out in the future. But it's worked for us. And, you know, ACEDs, half of them are computer engineers and network engineers. That is part of that capability, and that's moving underneath the G5. So now we're moving some of our network engineer and computer engineers underneath the G5 so they can develop the requirements and work their requirements and be able to, because what their forte is, besides finding new technologies, is building lesson plans or in evaluation plans for the technologies. So now we've revectored them to assist the G5 in someone working the JRSS side for them and writing the capabilities. Someone to look at new requirements, do a limited test on it, and then provide the G5. Here's what we're seeing from what you asked us to do, and it's a fully written document, almost a .mil-pf document. So that's what we're doing with with those engineer capabilities. Did I answer your question? Chief, answer your question too. All right.
Colonel Detweiler, we need to wrap it up. You want to make a closing remark, and I'll provide an update as we transition.
Yep. So he left. So what I appreciate is the enterprising reporter that was there reminding all of us that we're more than just the strategic side. We are closely tied with the tactical side, and we do have tactical units that are out there, but they're part of a strategic command. So it's hard to remember that they're both, but they are down in the mud doing what they need to do to provide support for their theaters. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we're here to provide decisive operations in support of unified action, and we allow the Army the freedom of maneuver in cyberspace while denying the same of our adversaries. And it's through the modernizing of the network, modernizing our workforce to meet the challenges in the environment to tomorrow, through training and talent management, and the standardization of our processes, authorities, and network, and services for the enterprise, and to make the enterprise network less complex. So that's all we have for today. Appreciate your time sitting here and listening to us talk and understanding what NETCOM is and where we plan on going and how we're tied closely with our cyber. Thank you.
Let's give them a big very much. It's great having NETCOM be a part of the program this year, and you certainly did your command well. We are in the lunch break right now, and just to peek ahead the next 30 minutes, we are going to have a coalition partner conference in the keynote area at 1 o'clock, and that'll last roughly 45 minutes, almost an hour, and we will have General Fogarty will be the keynote immediately following that session. So look forward to seeing you there. And the Expeditionary Enhanced Tactical Battalion session will go in here late this afternoon just before the reception. Enjoy your lunch if you're going to have it. We'll see you upstairs at 1 o'clock.